Daniel Eatock, artist.
To begin, I find it terrifying to speak in front of so many people, and it's really difficult. Okay, this is me, and this photograph was taken by the person on the very last row in the audience of the last lecture that I made. And I always do a project which, I know if I was in the audience, I would hate to participate in this project. And really, this project is designed to make everybody feel a bit uncomfortable, because I feel so uncomfortable. So what I do, I'm going to take a picture of you, and then I ask you to take a picture of him, and then I ask you to take a picture of her, or him. I'm sorry, I can't tell from here. And then for the camera to be passed to the next person, and then keep going down, back for each row. And then, I guess because we've got multi-tiers, whoever's on the last person downstairs, if you could run upstairs and keep the camera going. There you go. Oh yeah, and so the idea is that this is a chain. So the last person will take a picture of me, and then that will connect us all into this kind of loop or this circle. I have no idea now where to stand or sit because it's already been critiqued. I think Giorgio chose the best place. I think I'm going to move around. Okay, I have 23 minutes and 53 seconds left. This is an email that I sent to Richard. Oh, sorry, that Richard sent to me, I think yesterday or the day before. So I sent my test presentation to him, and he replied with this: "Hi Daniel, how are you doing? Looking forward to meeting you in Amsterdam." We had never met before. I'm going through all the presentations now. Are you sure your presentation isn't too long? You have 25 minutes and 127 slides. That means you have about 12 seconds per slide. Let me know if this is your plan, because then if it is, if it was my plan, it would be okay. It wasn't my plan. I thought I had an hour. So I had a choice to make. So I've made a presentation for 1 hour, but I have 25 minutes. So I had 3 choices. I can either reduce the number of slides, keep it the same and talk really fast, or I can have more slides. So I added more. I thought, I didn't like 12 seconds per slide. 12 is not, it didn't feel like a good number. So I wanted to make 10 seconds per slide. So I've added an additional number to make it up to 150 slides. So, okay, so now to the presentation. What can design do? Or what design can do? Sorry. And the theme, access to the city. So, in a way, I'm not sure what design can do, but thinking about the city, I think the city does an awful lot for design. I travel quite a lot, so I've recently been living in Norway in a remote village, living in the countryside, and making work there is interesting because I spend half my time there and half my time in London, and the work I make is quite different in those 2 different locations. And when I travel to cities, I find cities so rich that I almost don't need to do anything. The work just presents itself, and I just feel like I'm an observer. And by observing something, I can capture it and then represent it, and that's enough. So this is a photograph I took in I think it's in Moscow, but I think it's really funny that this is a soldier wearing camouflage, and he's also got a neon vest on top of the camouflage. So I think this kind of combination of high vis and camouflage together is really nice. This is a speed camera in Clerkenwell in London, and it's perfectly camouflaged with the building in the background. So moments like that, I think if I can see the presentation here. So moments like this are kind of better than design can ever be, because I don't think like the person who made the building wasn't aware of the speed camera, and the person who made the speed camera wasn't aware of the building. But when the two meet, it's magic. It's like it's just a really poetic moment. This is there's lots of these, so I don't need to really talk about these kind of matches or these kind of moments of alignment. But when I see them, I get goosebumps. I think it's like it's better than making something because it exists, and it's just a matter of acknowledging it. And a lot of these moments, like the bicycle, for example, they're just temporary alignments. It's something which might only exist for an hour. So to see that, it feels like a privilege, because I've seen this thing and it won't always be there. Yeah, so I kind of already said this, but this is just as a pointer for me to remember, and also to add an extra slide to this presentation. But with these works, with these photographs that I collect, I've had a project now which has been ongoing for about 10 years, where on the homepage of my website, I have a project called Picture of the Week, and I go back through all the photographs I've taken the previous week, and I select the one that kind of has the most kind of poetic or beautiful kind of phone moment. So like last week, the moment was this road sign. And I just really like that the leg is buckled on the sign, which kind of echoes the line on the sign. And connected with this project is another, like it's a project in two parts. The second part is called Thank You Pictures. And these are pictures which I made an open invitation on my website for people to participate and to make contributions. So most days I get sent one or two photographs, usually from people that I'd never met. And usually these pictures are kind of triggered from the pictures that I take, and then their pictures trigger me to look for other things. So it's kind of this, it's like a ping pong game where kind of my observations trigger other people's observations, their observations trigger mine, and it kind of just grows. So yeah, this is kind of a long-term ongoing project. So in this presentation now, there's a number of images that we'll see, and the ones which have been made by others are credited, so they'll always be credited in the bottom left-hand corner. So this was nice. This is in Venice, actually. This is just, I think, only down the road from Giorgio's studio. And then from that, somebody sent me this. And also, when you find something, sometimes just to record it, maybe it's not enough, just a photograph. So the title of these works, like a title for a photograph or a title for an artwork or for a project, the title is kind of an important part of the work. It's not. It can be an answer, or it can pose a question, or it can shift the way that the viewer kind of looks at the piece. So some of these titles I think are really kind of nice, as nice, or in some instances kind of more profound than the photograph. I think this is really nice. This is not a temporary thing. This is still there. This is in London, but I think what an amazing kind of combination of shops. And then the work I make, like this work is very much kind of spontaneous. It's what I find and discover. But also my practice as an artist, I try and create things which kind of are very light-handed. So I don't like to labour or I like to make things which seem as though they've just been arrived at rather than kind of forced or kind of... If something appears like there's been a struggle attached to it, then I'm not so keen on that. So this is a 2,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and the picture on the jigsaw puzzle is of another 2,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, unmade. And I really like this kind of when you bring these two things together. So even when you finish the jigsaw puzzle, it's really frustrating because you're left with something that's not finished. So not all the work that I'm going to show today is kind of directly connected to the city, but it's connected with the spirit that the city kind of gives us these kind of nice moments. This is a drain pipe, obviously, for a toilet. So, like the cross is like an archetypal symbol, like a very basic symbol. And it's a bit of a tenuous thing, but this is a necklace. This is really big on the screen, but it's a piece of jewellery which I formed from a single clasp. So a clasp is in a way, is the only functional part of a necklace. It's the part where you open and close the necklace. So by taking this kind of ready-made piece and connecting it to itself, you can form an endless chain. Lots of my work deals with kind of infinity or circles or kind of the idea of a circle, not just its form, something which begins and ends at the same point, or that maybe doesn't have a beginning or end. I think this is a really nice one, Mozart. So going places has gone. So the work on screen now is I had a show last September in a gallery in Dublin, and before I made the show, before I went to Dublin, I made an invitation for people who lived in Dublin that had pictures, photographs, or things which were in frames in the home. So kind of domestic work that was not really artworks, but things which they had hung on the wall, which they no longer liked the look of. And they asked them to loan them to the gallery for the duration of the show. And I opened the frame, and on the back of the glass I put the kind of the whitewash. So in a way it was a picture that people no longer looked at. So it was kind of, it used the language of kind of a closed shop or a vacant shop, but it was framed. So in the gallery space, there was probably maybe 30 of these, all different sizes, hung on a single wall. So the content of all the pictures was obscured by this kind of whitewash. This is one pair. These are thirsty twins. I think this was in Moscow. So, in a way, it's moments like this that make traveling like brilliant, because sometimes in your own environment, you're so used to your own environment that you no longer look. And when you go to a new place, everything is new. So you start to, you're really looking. You're kind of really active. Just very nice moments of alignment. This is really nice, the Burger King. But it's nice that Elvis loved burgers. Perhaps that's what killed him. But to have these two posters together, I think, is really nice. So not all of them kind of are funny, but kind of are just really sweet. The idea that there's two grit boxes with sand for the road and then the colour match with the content of those billboards, I think is a really nice thing. So this idea of pairing, two things coming together, one work that's more of a concept. It's not a piece I've ever made, but it's a piece that I like to think about. So two strobe lights set out of phase, so when one is off, the other is on, and to try and create a constant light. So I think this idea is that the work is the idea, not the idea realized. This is a piece I made for a show in Breda, in Holland, here in the Netherlands. And I was invited to make something to be shown outside of the gallery in the town of Breda. And it was made for Loca 01. And what I decided to do was I worked with the existing plinths or pedestals that the gallery had. So most galleries have these white boxes which normally would have a sculpture displayed on top. So I chose to, I think there was about a dozen plinths, all of different sizes. So I took these from the context of the garret and relocated them in the town, but always positioning them alongside another object to kind of create this relationship. So they became kind of street furniture. And so by positioning them next to bins or electrical boxes or ticket machines, you kind of had this nice, the relationship. So the plinth really wasn't the plinth is not necessarily an art object in this instance, but it's kind of the relationship of the two things which I was interested in exploring. So, thinking, I was trying to look at my own work, thinking of design, and I have a design background. I studied graphic design, but I no longer see my practice really. I don't see myself as a designer, but I often use kind of methodologies and kind of materials, and like lots of things that I make have a strong connection with design. I'm often invited to speak at design events, and I show in design museums, and I have a show, part of a group show in the Graphic Design Museum. So I'm happy to kind of be seen within the context of design, but I always see myself as an outsider. But when I think of design, I often think that design does too much, and I think maybe by doing a bit less could be better. So removing design maybe could be interesting. This is I really like this, that FedEx vans are being delivered, and this taxi is it's a taxi ride. This was sent to me a few years ago by, I think, someone from Amsterdam, and this really made me smile. This is the title is Scissors Who Need Scissors to Use Them. So they have this thing here, the tie wrap. So it's impossible to open them unless you already have a pair of scissors. So I really like the irony that this object which you buy to cut something can't be used unless you have another object to cut something. So I've been collecting as many examples of this as I can find. So every time I travel, I look in hardware stores for scissors or pliers or nippers or anything which is used to snip something open that's been packaged in a way that makes it redundant, and you need to have another set of the same things before you can use it. This is kind of I guess it's a sculpture that I made last year, and it's a can of spray primer, and it's the content of the can was sprayed towards a fan, and the fan blew back the spray at the can. So in a way, it's an inside-out can. So what was originally on the inside is now caught in the can on the outside. So I just turned it around. So the only part of this which is not covered in grey primer is the back of the nozzle. That's the only thing that I couldn't cover. This is great. This is, I think, a perfect sculpture. So it's a corn with a corn. I've been thinking a lot about designers are often given problems, and then you kind of go back with a solution to a problem. So that's quite a traditional way of looking at like a solution in a way, is that 1 + 1 = 2. But sometimes maybe you just have 2 before you have 1 + 1. I see a lot of my work kind of as answers, but really there was never a problem. And maybe the answer creates a problem rather than resolves a problem. So I don't really know. I guess sometimes by making work, we can kind of find solutions before problems even exist. So rather than waiting to be confronted with kind of an issue to resolve, we can kind of just propose solutions. Or question things. So this is a Pritt stick, and I think everyone knows that a Pritt stick is not so strong. Like it barely sticks a stamp on an envelope. So I stuck it on the studio ceiling. So I think really it's a big question mark. Is it real? Like, can a Pritt stick really do that? I think this should be called thermometer. No, I think the title is not so good. I'm going to have to go really quick to get to the end, so I'm going to blast through a few of these. And this is a car aerial. It's really long. It's about maybe like 1.5 meters tall. But when photographed from an aerial perspective, the aerial disappears as a dot. So like an aerial view is when you look down on something. So the object is an aerial. So it's a play kind of. That's nice. This is the sun eclipsed by a street lamp. These are nice alignments. This is in Venice. But this is really nice, I think, just, the two triangles. I guess this was connected with one of the images I supplied to represent me for the promotion of this conference. But here the books, obviously this piece of wood was straight, and by adding the books to the wood sagged. It happens to all of our bookshelves. But to compensate for that, I carefully selected the books to get this level edge. And the process of making was very nice, because every time I added something, I had to it was a response to the previous thing, and it was also informed what the next thing would need to be. So it's kind of an endless process of kind of moving forward and backwards. The complete thing. So this, I have only 4 minutes. This, the illustration of the object on the objects, for me it becomes like two mirrors when they face each other. So it opens up kind of like an infinite space. So when you see the object, this is slightly strange because it's a photograph of the object. So it's kind of another layer again. But when you see the actual object with an illustration of itself on the object, it has this like weird infinity kind of loop, which I think is really kind of a nice, when you put those two mirrors and you look and you can see forever. I think that's always like a fascinating kind of thing to observe. Do you know when the kids throw the shoes over the telephone wires and they just hang from the laces? I think it might represent like a drug territory sometimes, but I'm sure other times just kids stealing one of the friend's trainers and throwing it over. But I did the same thing, but I extended the laces so that it's difficult to see, but the laces hang all the way down, so the shoes just hang like a foot off the ground, so it looks like they're walking. This is a sculpture that looks like a table. It is a table, and it was all the objects that were on my table in my studio, but I shifted them to one end, and I removed one of the trestles, so the table's counterbalanced. So if you were to add or remove anything from that table, it would collapse. So when you walk into the studio, it appears like a functioning desk, but it has that tension, and it's very nice when people don't recognize and then suddenly realize, and that tension that it creates as an object, I find nice, quite interesting. A space for a canoe, maybe. So this, anyway, that was making, there's a long story, I don't have time to tell the story attached to that, but it's trying to make an irritation or a problem, responding to it in a positive way, to to try and transform it into something that's not, rather than resolving with anger, you can resolve with kind of humour, and it kind of takes away that irritation. These are trees which have been vandalised. So really kind of a sad thing when you see a broken tree. It's worse than seeing graffiti or a smashed car window. When you see a tree that's been snapped, I think it's really problematic. So I record these, but I always rotate the camera to return the tree back to its upright position. We don't have time for that. It's nice. I'm going to have to be really quick. So this is a ream of paper. A ream is 500 sheets of A4 paper. But this has been stacked, so that cut and stacked, so the proportions of the object is the same as a normal ream, but it's tall rather than low and wide. It's really nice. Moving stoplights. Tricycle. Have to keep moving quick. This was a table mat, and depending which side or which way it was positioned, it was you begging for food or you confronting a beggar. So it was, and it was made for a kind of a posh restaurant in Stockholm, and I didn't think they would accept it as a proposal, but they did. This is a complete set of Pantone pens held within a grid that I constructed, and they were left to just bleed through a big pack of paper. So each layer had a different print. This is it positioned alongside a damp spot. I think I'm out of time, but you can start asking questions. I'll just keep pressing the thing.
Yeah, shall we try that? You just keep on pushing and I'll ask you a question meanwhile. Is it a way for you to engage with the city as well?
Yeah.
I love it. I love you showing us that a way of engaging with the city is just to look at it and to experience it and to feel it. Is that what you want to show me?
That's what I just showed you,
yeah.
I think, yeah.
You do make work which is not in the city. Why do you do that? You can keep on pushing.
I don't think I make any work that's not about a city. Even when I'm not in a city. I think
the table you shown?
But I think I talked about that idea that I think the works, not all works directly relate to a city, but this idea, I think the works is informed by these kind of things which I discover in the city. So I think that takes...
So there's only one field of inspiration for you, and that's the city, period?
No, I guess it's people, not cities. I think it's the way people... When there's people around, things just happen, and it's kind of noticing what happens. So more things happen in a city because there are more people. Things still happen in villages or in remote places where there's few people, because if there's a person, I'm sure you'll still find things that are happening. But I guess my work is not so much about nature, really. It's about people.
Would you be so kind to sit on this chair?
Yeah.
Can we applaud for you, please?
I'm just going
to... Yeah, you just push on.
Come on, I have one last slide.
One slide. It's technique. Oh, here you go.
Okay, so the conclusion is, this is it was a highway code thing in England called Stop, Loot, Listen, and it was aimed at children before they crossed the road. But actually, I think it's a perfect kind of mantra that applies to being creative. So that's my conclusion.